Your father's estate passes entirely to his wife, Diane. I stared at the attorney, waiting for him to say more, waiting for my name, waiting for anything. But there was nothing else. 40 years of being Richard Coleman's daughter, 40 years of Sunday dinners and birthday calls and being there for every surgery, every scare, every moment that mattered. And in 3 years, a woman I barely knew had erased me completely. Diane sat across the table, dabbing her eyes with the tissue, but when she looked at me, just for a second, I saw it. She was smiling behind that tissue. That's when I knew. This wasn't grief, this was a plan, and I was going to find out exactly who Diane Mitchell really was. At first, it was little things. Daddy stopped calling me on Sundays. When I called him, Diane always answered. "Oh, your father's resting," she'd say. "I'll have him call you back." He rarely did. Then the visits became difficult. Every time I drove to Daddy's house, the house I grew up in, the house where Mama's roses still bloomed in the backyard, Diane had a reason why it wasn't a good time. "Richard has a doctor's appointment. We're having the carpets cleaned. He's just not feeling up to visitors today." I started feeling like a stranger in my own father's life. When I finally got through to Daddy on the phone one day, he sounded different, tired, confused. "Patty, Diane says you've been calling too much. She says it's upsetting me." "What?" "Daddy, I've barely talked to you in months." There was a long pause. "Diane said, she said you're trying to cause problems. She said you don't approve of her." My heart sank. "Daddy, that's not true. I just want to see you." Another pause, then Diane's voice in the background. "Richard, who's on the phone?" "I have to go, sweetheart," he said quickly, and he hung up. I drove over the next day anyway. Diane met me at the door. "This isn't a good time, Patricia." Her voice was ice cold. "I want to see my father." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Richard needs rest. All this drama you're creating is hard on his heart. If you really loved him, you'd give him space." She closed the door in my face. I stood on that porch, shaking with anger and confusion. The same porch where Daddy taught me to ride a bike. The same porch where Mama and I would drink lemonade on summer nights. I should have fought harder. I should have called a lawyer. I should have done something. But I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that Diane was just protective, that Daddy would come around. 2 years later, he was dead, and I learned just how wrong I'd been. Daddy passed away on February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day. He was 78. The death certificate said heart failure, but I'll always wonder if loneliness had something to do with it. I wasn't there when he died. Diane didn't call me until 12 hours later. "I didn't want to upset you in the middle of the night," she said, her voice flat. No tears, no emotion, nothing. I never got to say goodbye. The funeral was small. Diane planned it without asking me anything. She chose the wrong hymns. Daddy hated Amazing Grace. He always said it was overplayed. Mama's favorite was How Great Thou Art. Diane didn't know that. Diane didn't know anything real about him. I sat in the front row of the church and felt like a guest at a stranger's funeral. Then came the will reading. I expected to share the estate with Diane. That seemed fair. The house, Daddy's savings, his pension. I assumed it would be split. But when the attorney read the will, I realized Diane had been planning this from the beginning. Everything went to her. The house, the savings account, $340,000, his pension, Mama's jewelry, which should have come to me, even the old grandfather clock that had been in our family for 4 generations. Everything. "This can't be right," I said, my voice shaking. "When was this will written?" The attorney checked his papers. "November 2023, 3 months before your father's passing." 3 months, when Daddy could barely remember what day it was. I looked at Diane. "You did this. You manipulated a sick old man." She pressed a tissue to her eyes. "Your father knew exactly what he was doing, Patricia. He wanted to take care of me. I'm sorry if that hurts you." "He had dementia. He couldn't—" The will was properly witnessed and notarized. She stood up, smoothing her black dress. "I think we're done here." Pause. She walked out of that office with everything my parents had spent their lives building, and I was left with nothing, not even the truth. But I was going to find it. My husband, Frank, told me to let it go. "It's not worth the stress, Patty. Your health is more important than money." But this wasn't about money. This was about my father. This was about justice. Pause. I started digging. I searched Diane's name online. Diane Mitchell. Diane Coleman, her married name. Nothing useful came up at first. But then I tried something different. I searched for Diane combined with the town she'd mentioned once, a small place in Kentucky where she'd claimed to grow up. Pause. And I found her. Only her name wasn't Diane Mitchell. It was Diane Harmon, and she'd been married before. Not once, not twice, 4 times. 4 elderly husbands in 15 years. 4 men who died within 3 years of marrying her. 4 estates that passed entirely to Diane. My hands were shaking as I read the articles. Local newspaper stories from small towns across 3 states. Each one the same pattern. Wealthy widower meets charming woman at a community event. Quick marriage, family cut off. Husband dies, wife inherits everything. One article quoted a daughter from her second marriage. "She isolated my father from everyone who loved him. By the end, he thought we'd abandoned him. We hadn't. She just wouldn't let us in." I read that sentence 5 times. It could have been me writing it. This woman was a predator, a con artist, and my father was her latest victim. But I needed proof, real proof that would hold up in court. That's when I found Barbara. Barbara Jennings, Diane's 3rd husband's daughter. She lived in Louisville, and she'd spent years trying to prove what Diane really was. "I've been waiting for this call," she said when I reached her. "It's not very surprising that it would knock him down. That's something he'll probably need." She had everything. Bank records showing Diane had transferred funds into secret accounts before each husband died, testimony from neighbors who'd witnessed her controlling behavior, and something else. Pause. A handwriting expert's analysis. The signature on her 3rd husband's will didn't match his actual handwriting. It was forged. "I couldn't prove it alone," Barbara said, "but if we work together, if we show a pattern, we might have a chance." Pause. For the first time since Daddy died, I felt hope. Barbara and I hired an attorney together, a woman named Janet Price, who specialized in elder abuse cases. She was expensive, but she was worth it. "This is going to take time," Janet warned us. "These cases always do." It took 11 months. 11 months of gathering evidence, filing motions, waiting for court dates. But we built an airtight case. Janet subpoenaed Dady's medical records. They showed he was diagnosed with moderate dementia in August 2023, 3 months before the new will was signed. His doctor testified that he couldn't have understood complex legal documents. The notary who witnessed the will admitted Diane had paid him $1,500 to skip the standard competency questions. He lost his license. And then Janet brought in the handwriting expert. The signature on Richard Coleman's will shows clear signs of guided handwriting, the expert testified. Someone was physically moving his hand. This was not an independent signature. Diane's face went white. But the final blow came from the district attorney's office. Once Janet presented our evidence, combined with Barbara's documentation from the previous case, they opened a criminal investigation. It took another 8 months for the estate to be sorted out. But eventually, the court restored Daddy's original will, the one he'd written in 2019, before Diane ever existed. The house on Maple Lane went to me. Mama's jewelry came home. The grandfather clock is in my living room now, chiming every hour, just like it did when I was a little girl. Most of the money was recovered, too. Not all of it, Diane had spent some, but enough. I donated $50,000 to an elder abuse prevention charity. It felt right, like something Daddy would have wanted. Barbara and I stay in touch. We've become friends, bound together by our shared experience. Last month, she came to visit and we planted roses in my backyard, the same variety Mama used to grow. Daddy's ashes are scattered there now, mixed with the soil, surrounded by flowers. I think about him every day. I wonder if he knew at the end that something was wrong. I wonder if he ever thought about me. Last week, I was going through some boxes I'd taken from the house, and I found a birthday card. It was dated 2022, the last birthday I had before Diane cut me off completely. It was in Daddy's handwriting, shaky but clear. To my Patty, you are the best thing I ever did in this life. I love you more than words can say. Don't ever forget that. Daddy. He never mailed it. Maybe Diane stopped him. Maybe he just forgot. But he wrote it. He remembered me. Even in the fog of confusion and manipulation, some part of him held on. I framed that card. It sits on my nightstand now. Some people spend their whole lives wondering if they were loved. I don't have to wonder anymore. I know.